Thank you so much, our honorable guest, for coming on time. We really appreciate your presence, and I apologize again for the late start of this panel discussion. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this important panel discussion on women's and youth participation in Parliament in a time of polarization and adversity. My name is Rana Sidani. I'm Senior Communication Advisor and former spokesperson for the World Health Organization, for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent, and the ICRC. We are gathered here today to explore how Parliament can become more inclusive, how they can reflect the full diversity of the population they represent, especially when political polarization and digital hostility present growing threats to democratic engagement. Today's session will take the form of moderated conversation with our distinguished panelists, followed by interventions from speakers of Parliament and lead and heads of delegation. Each will have 2 minutes to deliver his or her address. To be able to give the floor to everyone, I urge you to stick to the 2 minutes time slot. If not, I will remind you by raising the yellow flag that you have 30 seconds to conclude. I'll try not to use the flag. We will then conclude with brief remarks and reflections from our panel. Please note that this panel is being recorded and will be available on IPU YouTube channel. If you are active on social media, you can join the conversation using hashtag 6WCSP and hashtag IPU. And please visit the IPU exhibition space in the Salle des Pas Perdus, where you can discover more about the IPU's 136 years old history, as well as its current work. The IPU is also interviewing speakers as part of its new campaign, Achieving Gender Equality, Action by Action. Pictures of the panel will be available on our Flickr account, and IPU is active on X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky, so please join the conversation using the hashtag. We want the entire world to hear what you're saying today. So now, please let me introduce our esteemed panelists. Ms. Cynthia Lopez Castro, Senator of Mexico and President of the IPU Bureau of Women Parliamentarian, welcome. Dr. Philippe Paulier, Assistant Secretary General of Youth Affairs at the United Nations, welcome. Ms. Gabriela Morawska-Staneka, Senator and Vice President of the IPU from Poland, welcome. Ms. Diana Lutta, Policy Specialist, Gender Responsive Foreign Policy from UN Women, welcome. And Dr. Wessel van den Berg, Senior Advocacy Officer at Equimondo Center of Masculinities and Social Justice, welcome. Let's begin. I would like to address Ms. Cynthia Lopez Castro first. Madam President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarian, the IPU is known for its unique wealth of information on women and youth participation in Parliament. What is the situation today, especially after the super election year that we have witnessed in 2024? Did it deliver on promise?
Thank you so much, Ms. Zidane. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you in this panel, and thank you so much to prefer us instead of Michael Douglas. So thank you so much for being here. So in the past elections, 2024, there were 73 assemblies that have elections, and now the results are that women, we are represented in 27% of the parliaments all around the world. And also out of 274 chambers, in all the world, we have 52 women speakers that are here. I also want to congratulate the Speaker of Lesotho. Thank you so much for being here, dear Speaker, and also the member of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians from Russia. So I want to tell you that in this election, we saw a good advance. We are advancing in gender equality. We have still 6 countries in the world with gender equality. We have Rwanda, Cuba, Nicaragua. We have United UAE that is a second consecutive election, and they have parity. And of course, my country, Mexico, has parity for the second time in both chambers, and also Costa Rica has parity now in their chambers. So I think it's a little bit slow, but it's increasingly a little bit. So now in Mexico in 2024, we have the first woman president in 200 years. Finally, we did it. Is the President Claudia Sheinbaum. Thank you so much. And she won with is also the most voted president in the history of Mexico, with 35 million people voting for her. So she was very strong. She's very strong, also with a majority in both chambers. So now what we can see, that we only have 80 prime ministers and presidents that are women in the world. It's only the 11%. So we need to keep trying in this representation for women. The Americas are doing great because we have now Mexico, we have also Honduras with a women president, and we have four countries that have parity in America. Europe, well, it's improving. France now has more representation in the chamber. In the past election, now they have a women speaker, and also in other countries. What is the big challenge? We need more representation in Asia, and we have 3 countries in the world that the parliament has no women. So we will be talking about in this panel about. Thank you.
So Ms. Castro, what are the main challenges? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the main challenges hindering equal participation by men and women in parliament?
The big challenge is to have more women in the high-level decision process. We need more women as leader of the parties. We need more women being in the Committee of Budget, in the Committee of Finance, in the Committee of Defense, because let me tell you, recent research that you can find it in all those documents that IPU, and I want to recognize the Secretariat and Zeina for all the work, because you can have that information and you have a big map there. It's very useful. Now, only 11% of women in parliament wants to be, or they are in the most important committees like finance, budget, defense. Most of them, they are always in education, in social committee, in welfare, that of course are important, but also we need women where is the money, because we need gender perspective. We need women where is the power. Yeah, you are right, Mrs. Speaker from Lesotho. We need women where is the power. We need women where you are taking decisions. Also, I say hello to our dear member of the Executive Committee, and Kavira Mapera from Democratic Republic of Congo, that are members of the Bureau. So now we need also to talk about violence. So violence against women in politics, it has been it has become a defining feature of the political life of so many women, especially young women that are suffering violence, women of colors and those from marginalized communities. Abuse, threats, harassments are also too often part of the daily reality of women politicians. And you know, that's the most alarming, is how violence has become normalized. We cannot normalize violence against politicians. There had been an openly completely outside to reach the law. So there is not just a woman issue, it's a direct attack to democracy. And it does not stop here. We are also dealing with toxic effects of polarization, disinformation, misogynistic backlash, all of which feed on fear, exclusion, and intimidation against women. So at the same time, what does Parliament we have to do? We have to look inward. Many institutions still reflect masculine norms that make it difficult or even impossible for women and young people to lead. So we need to access to the leadership roles, committee influence, and these are still unequally distributed. So yes, we have made progress, but we truly want inclusive parliaments. We have to move beyond celebrating numbers. True inclusion, it's about who gets in as well, and who gets influence, who gets to lead, and who gets to feel they belong. And just I finish with something. Now, we are looking a lot of examples of high-level women as former president of New Zealand, Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, that now she wrote a book about that. And we have the president also, the Prime Minister of Finland. I think it was Finland, yes. And we have another examples that women are resigning. So imagine, we left our life working so hard to be finally in power, and then because of violence, because of harassment, because they attack us all the time, you said, well, I will resign. I just want to tell you that we need you. We need you strong, we need you fighting, and we need you very strong against violence, because violence and online harassment or harassment cannot be more powerful than women. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator, for this valuable insight and for this contagious motivation. Thank you so much. Before I invite you to watch a short video, I would like to welcome my colleague from IPU, Jonathan, who is my guardian angel, who makes sure that I keep on track and I keep on time. Thank you, Jonathan. I should have introduced you at the beginning. So now I invite you to watch this short video about gender and equality. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Isn't just a concept.
I invite you to visit the website and encourage your network to join this campaign. Let's go back now to our panelists. I now welcome Dr. Philippe Poulier, the UN First Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. Dr. Poulier, your office is promoting youth participation in and through the United Nations and multilateralism. How do you see progress advancing so far?
Thank you, Rana, for moderating this panel, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very happy to be here once again, joining an IPU event, and special thanks also and congratulations to Seina and Jonathan, who are really good partners in crime when it's about promoting youth engagement and youth participation. You know, I think, Rana, our office was established quite recently in an organization that is this year celebrating 80 years. Our office was established 3 years back. I think the establishment of a specific structure within the UN system with a mandate given by the member states of the United Nations to really promote the meaningful inclusion and participation of young people is a reflection of a global agenda that is moving forward, you know. I believe that how we are moving forward is not fast enough, you know. And in a world where the majority of the population are young people, and that's the case globally when we consider global demographies that reflect that 50% of the world's population is under 30 years old. But when we go in some regions, this is even much more higher, such as Africa, Middle East countries, and some Asia-Pacific countries, and some countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. You know, I think there's some global statistics when it's about the inclusion of young people and their participation in decision-making that reflect that we are not being able to reflect that in our institutions, you know. And that's because our institutions have structural barriers when it's about young people's participation, you know. In some countries, we still have legal barriers when it's about, for example, a young person to run for office, you know. And even though in many countries you can vote from 18, and we've seen some progress in countries that are even going even further. And for example, the UK recently announced that they were going to approve the vote for young people on 16. We still see that there are some barriers, for example, when it's about running for certain positions, you know. And those structural barriers are the ones that are creating our institutions are not necessarily reflecting, you know, and inclusive of the societies they should represent, you know. Within the UN, I think there is a global commitment in terms of moving this into action, and a global commitment that is reflected and should be reflected also at the national level with national policies, you know. And this framework is the Pact for the Future, a Pact for the Future that was established a few months ago in September, where world leaders in the General Assembly committed, you know, to youth participation and youth engagement as a big priority when it's about transforming institutions, because at the end, it's really about building trust, you know. It's impossible to really build trust if you don't have the spaces to be part of, you know. Trust, it's a process that comes through participation, but having the access to participate is the first step for any trust-building process, you know.
So what's your priority of action? Building trust and?
I think that, of course, building trust is it's a very complex and long-term, you know, guide, you know. And definitely, you know, for us, you know, the creating a UN system, but also through that UN system also being able to reflect this into global and national commitments when it's about the inclusion and the meaningful participation of young people, that's one of our guiding principles and our big priority. And why? Because, you know, I tend to think about a discussion I had a few weeks ago with a group of young activists, and this was a young person coming from Lebanon, very involved in the academia, you know, and when we asked him about what are some of the challenges that, that young people face and what are the necessities that young people face, I think he made a very interesting reflection, It's very typical that when there's a young person in a room, the first, question that people will ask is, okay, what is what young people want, or what young people need, And the truth is that what young people want, what young people need is the same as everyone, They want to have access to economic opportunities. They want to live in peace. They want to be happy, I think that's what we all want in our societies. But I think what is the necessity is that young people are claiming to be taken seriously, I think that's a big switch, It's understanding that when we are promoting policies that affect the whole of our societies, in societies where the majority of the people are young, we need to include them in decision-making, We need to understand that it's not only about delivering for young people, but it's delivering with young people, And that's why our big, and common priority across all of the actions, it's really about building with and for young people.
Dr. Felipe, being from Lebanon, I fully understand the youth perspective on that. So, Dr. Felipe, how can parliaments contribute to such effort? You have parliaments from all over the world here. What do you want them to do?
So, for me, it would be disrespectful if I'm saying members of parliament what they should do, It's not my role. But yes, maybe it's a global reflection. I was saying that it will be very disrespectful for me to be in this stage saying you what you should do, You are the people that were elected by your people, and you know what the people of your countries need, But yes, maybe a reflection is that it's really have a global and a common commitment to really include young people as full-fledged partner in what you are doing, And I think that aligned with the Pact for the Future, this, commitment that all of our national governments took, a few months ago at the UN, and being the UN that unique platform where the world is trying to really find those common goals and those common tools to address these challenges. It's really committing and through the role of parliaments implement this Pact for the Future, I think there's concrete actions such as creating within your parliaments and adapted to the national realities of each country, mechanisms to include young people, to consult young people, and in a meaningful way, which is it's an improving and continuous process, I think it's about building stronger partnerships when it's about governments and young people with an intergenerational component, And I believe that, yes, it's about promoting IPU's I Say Yes to Young People in Parliament's campaign, which is still active and is very interlinked when it's about promoting also gender equality. Young people reflect and are connected to an agenda of being more inclusive and when it's about promoting gender equality, So I think that my final reflection here, it's about trust at the end, It's about trusting young people, trusting in their capacity, in the skills they bring in any process, and it's about promoting this in an intergenerational way. This is not about young people versus the people that currently have the power, This is about how, in an intergenerational way, we build, better societies and better institutions, that are able to address the challenges we're facing today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Poirier. Your work is critical in amplifying youth voices. Thank you so much. And now I turn to Senator Gabriela Morawska-Stanika, Vice President of the IPU. Madam President, through the recent presidential election held in Poland, your country has a vibrant recent experience in trying to resolve polarization. What are the most important lessons from this experience?
Thank you very much for being here. This is a very difficult question because we can say when we observe the international scene and international politics, the polarization is a phenomenon of the current world. And we can say, perhaps, that the polarization of the societies is the phenomenon of the 21st century, everywhere. And it has gained prominence recently, especially in light of Donald Trump's first victory in the 2016 presidential election in the United States. His win not only shook the American political scene, but also highlighted deep social dividers that had existed for many years, but often unnoticed on such a scale. President Trump became a symbol of the struggles of various social groups that felt excluded by political elites and the media. His rhetoric, often very controversial, very provocative, attracts supporters who felt frustration, anger towards the status quo. And polarization manifests not only in political differences, but also in culture and in social spheres. Social media, as a communication tool, has contributed to the creation of information bubbles, where users are primarily exposed to content what confirms their beliefs. And in consequences, we no longer have voters with ideas. We have believers who cannot be convinced anymore because they believe what they have heard, and it leads to further escalation of conflicts and hinders communication between different social groups. During the recent presidential election in Poland, much attention was given to the phenomenon of social polarization, and of course, we didn't win, because as we see, Polish society is very polarized, is divided for two parts. But, of course, there are some key lessons that can be drawn for this experience. First, interfaction communication. There is strong evidence that open dialogue among different political and social groups is crucial to countering polarization. It allows for an understanding of the various perspectives and issues that other parties face. Civil education. I think not only in Poland, I think in each country we have lack of civic education, knowledge about political processes, civil rights, and the mechanism of democracy is essential. And investing on civic education is crucial, because citizens would be better prepared to participate in elections and in public decisions. And of course, media. Media as connecting tool, the role of the media is shaping public opinions is enormous. And it's very important, social media, because for young people, we are talking about young people, they don't read such newspapers. They see on social media, and sometimes I think there is technology of the screens, not what you read, what the opinion you believe, you can agree, disagree. No, you see the screen, you have opinion at once. And responsibility of leaders, I think, is the most important thing now, because political leaders should be very responsible for their statements, actions, and rhetoric, and avoid rhetoric which can create the conflicts. So promoting values such as empathy, understanding can impact the atmosphere of public debate. I am a barrister, And in my work always was responsibility for every word I say publicly. And I think we need politicians who are responsible for words. And of course, local level dialogue and combating extremists and significance of diversity. Recognizing social diversity is a strength rather than weakness is valuable. Different viewpoints can enrich discussions and lead to more comprehensive solutions to the problems.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all these important lessons learned. And I agree with you, it's very difficult to retain the attention of youth. You have 8 seconds before someone decides to scroll down or to stop and read. So thank you so much. My question is, do you think that inclusion in Parliament can counter risks of polarization, and how?
Inclusion in Parliament refers to the process of ensuring that diverse social groups have access to political representation and can participate in decision-making at the legislative level. This includes individuals from ethnic and sexual minorities, people with disabilities, as well as various age and social groups. Inclusion in Parliament aims for balanced representation where the voices of those who may be marginalized are heard and can be considered. This often involves implementing appropriate mechanisms such as quotas of support programs designed to enhance the participation of this group in political life. Through inclusion, parliaments can better reflect the diversity of society, which in turn can lead to fairer and more balanced legislative decisions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that you have touched on this question, but I would like to check if you have anything to add. In your view, what are the impacts that electoral turnover, right-wing momentum, and pushback on rights can have on the future for women and youth leadership in Parliament and politics in Poland?
Changes in electoral preferences and the rise of far-right in Poland may lead to several consequences that will impact the future. But I have to underline once again, it concerns not only Poland, it concerns many countries. And limiting gender equality. The far right often promotes traditional family values, which can lead to the restriction of policies for gender equality. As a result, women may face barriers in advancing to decision-making positions. Decline in representation of young people. The rise of popularity of the far right may discourage young generation from engaging in politics, fearing that their voices and needs will be not properly represented. Escalation of social conflicts, increased political polarization may lead to greater social tensions, which in turn may deter youth and women from political activism due to fears of insecurity on recruitants to engage in controversial debates. Restoration of traditional social rules. Far-right ideologies may contribute to a return to traditional gender rules, which may practically undermine the position of women in politics and in the society. And lack of support for innovative initiatives. Young female and male leaders may face difficulties in promoting modern and ambitious social and economic reforms that are critical for their generation. And erosion of political diversity, the dominance of extreme ideologies may lead to the homogenization of the political landscape, limiting opportunities for dialogue, for cooperation among diverse groups, including women and young.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Senator. I'm sure that you have a lot to learn from Poland's experience. Thank you for all the newcomers, for our guests, honorable guests. Thank you so much to see the venue, the room full. Thank you so much. Now I move to our next panelist, Ms. Diana Lutte from the UN Women Geneva office. Welcome. UN Women is instrumental for progress in the Sustainable Development Goal, seeking to achieve gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. My question is, what is your analysis of progress so far?
Thank you for that question, Rana. And as we all know, today we are at 5 years before we get to the 2030 mark to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, as we've heard, progress has been quite slow, especially on gender equality. Data produced by UN Women and UNDESA shows that modest progress has been made over the last decade globally. Women hold 1 in 4 parliamentary seats. This is a significant rise from a decade ago. The share of women and girls living in extreme poverty has finally dropped to below 10%. After a sharp increase during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these achievements, however, none of the indicators and sub-indicators of SDG 5, which is the goal for gender equality, has been met. Yet we know that gender equality is the accelerator for the entire 2030 agenda. Without gender equality, we cannot truly eradicate poverty, ensure health and well-being. We cannot achieve quality education or build peaceful and inclusive societies. Parliaments have historically had a very critical role to play in turning the SDGs promise into action, from translation of global goals into national policies, laws, and strategic action plans, to strengthening public institutions, gender-responsive budgeting, and to multilateral cooperation. We look forward to this continued commitment. And just last week, as many of you might be aware, at the conclusion of the high-level political forum in New York, member states adopted a ministerial declaration reaffirming their unwavering commitment to the 2030 agenda. This too, ladies and gentlemen, is progress. And we look forward to working with parliaments to advance the SDGs further and at a faster pace. Thank you.
How is this impacting on women's political participation and leadership, and how to accelerate equality?
Rana, when progress is sluggish on the broader SDGs advancement, it's a clear signal that the underlying systemic issues that hinder gender equality are not being adequately addressed. They're not directly impacting women's ability to rise and to thrive in leadership roles. Despite decades of advocacy, reform, global commitments, progress towards gender parity in political leadership, the pace remains unacceptably slow. As of January 2025, women occupy only 27% of seats in national parliaments. The representation of young women is even more stark. Those under the age of 30 account for less than 2% of all members of parliament. The situation in executive leadership is similarly sobering, with only 29 countries in the world led by women, and 22.9% of cabinet ministers globally are women. These figures are not merely statistics, but a resounding call to action. These numbers underscore the persistent and interlocking barriers, ranging from structural obstacles, discriminatory social norms, lack of political will to challenge the status quo, and pervasive threat of violence that continue to exclude women, particularly young women, from the highest levels of decision-making. And this data compels us to respond with renewed urgency, bold commitments, and transformative action. And the path forward is clear. We must implement ambitious and enforceable gender quotas, advance gender-sensitive reforms within parliaments, and adopt a zero-tolerance approach to all forms of violence against women in politics. These measures are not an option, but rather essential to building inclusive, resilient, and representative democracies.
Thank you, Ms. Diana, for all these call to actions. But how do you see changes in political landscape, including polarization and persistent and renewed misogynistic social norms impacting women's political participation and leadership?
As we've heard from the the speaker before me, we gather today at a time when polarization is deepening across political systems, and global challenges are clearly reshaping the landscape of political and public life. In highly fragmented political environments, women, especially those advocating for progressive gender policies, can become targets of intensified attacks because of polarization. The very spaces meant for democratic debate can very easily become arenas of hostility, pushing women out of political discourse. Yet, it is precisely in such moments that the principles of inclusion and equality, including gender equality, must be most fiercely upheld. Beyond legal and policy reforms, what is urgently required to address polarization is a fundamental shift in political culture to respond to the changes in political landscapes we are currently observing. A political culture in which women, and particularly young women, are not only welcomed into parliamentary spaces, but are fully empowered to shape legislative priorities and influence national agendas. A political culture in which women are recognized, respected, and supported as leaders. A political culture where inclusion is not treated as an afterthought or a symbolic gesture, but embraced as a core principle of democratic governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, for your thoughtful analysis. And now, last but not least, I would like to welcome Dr. Wessel van den Berg, Senior Advocacy Officer at Equimundo. Wessel, Equimundo studies suggest that younger men often don't hold more gender equitable attitude than older generation. How should we interpret this finding?
Thank you so much for the question. And just to acknowledge that this trend is real and consistent. We first saw the trend of younger men holding more conservative views on gender in our International Men and Gender Equality Survey across multiple countries, 66,000 respondents, and more recently in the State of America's Men report that we've recently completed for 2025. Alarmingly, men's views on masculinity are becoming more restrictive. For example, in 2017, 34% of American men agreed that a man should always have the final say about decisions in his relationship or marriage. And by 2025, that had grown to 42%. So we're seeing a deepening political gender divide in some countries, the US and some European countries, with men moving more towards the far right and women seeming to move more towards the extreme left. There's also quite a strong connection between harmful masculinities, men's disconnection from society, our online lives, and a mistrust in democracy. But I also want to be clear to say that these forms of rigid masculinities are also hurting men. Mental health outcomes are worsening, particularly for young men. And many young men express that no one really knows them. So they're turning to online spaces for connection and often for quite healthy questions. For example, in the State of American Men, young men reported that no one cares about them. 69% of 18 to 24-year-olds reported that no one really cares if men are okay. So in this conversation, I would say that in addition to supporting women's leadership, we also have the challenge of also thinking about men as stakeholders and contributors to gender equality.
Thank you, Wessel, thank you. So what is the role of man, especially young man, in changing gender perception and narrative on leadership and politics as a male domain?
So I think there are hopeful shifts in terms of men changing gendered perceptions, younger men. We are seeing that the younger generation, men are showing gradually more contribution to care work at home, which is really encouraging to see. Men also, according to the State of the World's Fathers report, show more support for care policies. And we focus on care as an organization because in addition to holding men accountable for stopping violence and ending the harm that men cause, we also want to offer men something positive to do. We also want to offer something good to do. So also, in addition to that, we see that these caring social relationships, I think of the relationship with my daughter and my son, do provide an alternative sense of purpose and meaning in men's lives that offer an alternative to the meaning and the affirmation that they find in misogynistic spaces. So I think practically two suggestions that I would have, with the respect noted by my colleague, is that young men in the private sphere can lighten the care load by doing care work that, and also encouraging boys to value care. And then secondly, visibly supporting female political leaders and to ensure the online safety for women in politics on the internet. Some organizations that are doing great work in this regard is the Christchurch Call, the Joe Cox Foundation in the UK, and the Centre for Information Resilience in the UK. I think the main point is that young men can also help to fix the system that keeps women out of leadership, in addition to supporting the actions within Parliament.
Thank you, Vasil. Mr. Lopez Castro pointed out earlier to the importance of gender-sensitive parliament to advance equality. In your view and experience, what is the role of man in promoting gender-sensitive parliaments? Please share examples of good practice. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to offer two challenges and one invitation in this regard. But before I do that, just to refer to the Gender Sensitive Parliament Action Plan developed by the IPU as a great resource, and of course the IPU Kigali Declaration of 2022 as wonderful guidelines for how men can support gender equal parliaments. So the first challenge I feel that we face is that for men to support gender sensitive policy making, and in addition to allowing space for women to step into the so-called powerful policy-making spaces, for men also to become more involved in the social and care-focused policy decisions. We've seen powerful examples of policies that are important. For example, the health system reforms in Rwanda and in Brazil that focuses on engaging men in antenatal care, and of course the national care policies like in Uruguay. As always, I mentioned parental leave. We have the great examples from Norway, Spain recently, and in my own country, in South Africa, we now have a constitutional court case on parental leave going. The second challenge is, in addition to this policy making, to also acknowledge men in parliaments as caregivers. The men in this room have families, and not just lawmakers, and for men in this room to acknowledge that. In Iceland, working with political leaders, we've hosted a few barbershop conversations, and in the UK and the US, there are all-party parliamentary groups and dads' caucuses emerging that have men gather not only as lawmakers, but also as caregivers. And that opens a whole new lens on policy making in return. So my suggestion, my humble suggestion, is that each parliament in this room starts a dad's caucus. And then my final invitation, I know I've got 10 seconds left, is to join us in a very practical and exciting process that we are busy with, working with lawmakers around the world, but I'll talk about that in my closing comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vasil, for this inspiring speech. Thank you so much. So thank you to all our panelists for such a rich and thought-provoking discussion. We heard today that despite a historical election year, the path to equality and inclusion remain complex. We were reminded of the persistent barriers facing women and youth in politics, from structural inequality and digital violence to political polarization. Yet, we also saw clear pathways forward, from Senator Lopez Castro's push for youth quotas to Dr. Pollier's call for multilateral youth engagement, to the lessons learned from Poland's democratic resilience experience, to the UN Women emphasized on the urgency of confronting misogynistic norms, while Dr. Vandenberg challenged men, especially young men, to step up as allies for gender-sensitive parliament. Let us carry these insights with us as we continue to push for inclusive, representative, and equitable democracies. So now we finish the first part of the panel discussion. Now I would like to open the floor to speakers of the parliaments and heads of member of delegation who have requested to make remarks. Each speaker is kindly asked to limit their remarks to 2 minutes. We'll remind you of the time by raising this yellow flag that you still have only 30 seconds. Please be my champion and stick to the 30 seconds, because if you go further, we cannot give the floor to everyone. And I have the police sitting next to me here who will punish me later on. The speaking orders follows the order in which we have received the speaking requests. The speakers of the parliament will speak first, followed by heads and members of delegation. Before we begin, I will try all my best to pronounce your names correctly, and forgive me if I don't, okay? Let's start first with Lord McFall of Alcolith, Lord Speaker of the House of Lords, United Kingdom.
Thank you, panel. It's a privilege for me to be speaking here today as a result of this thought-provoking discussion on an urgent challenge to our parliamentary systems. In the United Kingdom, parliamentarians have been subject to increasing abuse, intimidation and threats in recent years, and women have been disproportionately targeted. This includes online abuse and threats of murder and rape. Politicians' homes have been targeted, and tragically, 2 fine parliamentarians were murdered in recent years, one of them a close friend of mine. International fora such as this are important for supporting women and young parliamentarians, and we commend the work done by IPU. But as well as tackling the threats, we must not forget the essential task of encouraging more women and young people to get involved in politics and to consider serving their communities as parliamentarians. The leadership of Parliament also needs to be inclusive and diverse, and I am proud that 50% of our speakers in the House of Lords have been women. Fellow parliamentarians, trust and confidence in our democracy has been damaged, and it's weakening by the day. Our overriding mission as politicians is to face these hard truths by action and communicating our vision, our story, infused with hope for the young people who will inherit our soiled legacy, by embracing their concerns, their worries, reaching out to them, walking with them on a path replete with conviction, hope and optimism. Only that way can we change our society for the benefit of all.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. François-Xavier Kalinda, President of the Senate, Rwanda.
Merci, Madame la modératrice, pour la parole. Je tiens d'abord à saluer la pertinence du thème de cette réunion-débat. Permettez-moi de replacer cette discussion dans le contexte du Rwanda, un pays qui, il y a 31 ans, sortait du génocide perpétré contre les Tutsis avec un tissu social déchiré et des institutions en ruine. Au lendemain du génocide de 1994, le Rwanda a fait un choix fondamental, rebâtir sur des valeurs d'unité, de réconciliation, d'inclusion et de responsabilité partagée. Dans cette dynamique, la participation des femmes et des jeunes a été érigée en priorité nationale. Aujourd'hui, le Rwanda compte 63,75% de femmes au sein de la Chambre des députés et 53% au Sénat. Les jeunes sont représentés au Parlement par des députés spécifiquement élus par les structures de jeunes. Des mécanismes de soutien tels que les forums nationaux de femmes et de jeunes, ainsi que les cadres légaux d'égalité de genre, ont permis de créer un environnement politique plus ouvert, plus sécurisée et plus équitable. Cet engagement ne relève pas uniquement de l'ambition politique. Il est le fruit d'une volonté nationale profonde de réconcilier la société rwandaise à travers une démocratie participative fondée sur l'égalité. Partant de cette expérience du Rwanda, nous devons faire du Parlement un espace d'ouverture, d'inclusion et d'équité. La participation des femmes et des jeunes n'est pas un luxe, encore moins une faveur. C'est une exigence de justice, une garantie de paix et une condition de prospérité pour tous. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Votre Excellence. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Fernanda Ley, Speaker of the National Parliament, Timor-Leste.
Thank you for the time. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, despite progress made toward inclusive governance, especially regarding women's political participation, we still face significant barriers to a more inclusive parliament in Timor-Leste. As the most relevant structural and institutional barrier, I will point the party-dominated candidate selection. Political parties are the gatekeepers of electoral lists. Despite the mandatory quota system, minimum 1 in every 3 candidates must be a woman. Party elites remain mostly male and hold disappropriate power in leadership and nominations. There are also significant socio-cultural barriers, such as persistent patriarchal norms, meaning that traditional beliefs about gender roles continue to marginalize women and discourage their participation in politics. The notion that women's primary roles are domestic still prevails in many rural communities. Stigma and resistance LGBTQIA+ individuals and personnel with disabilities often face stigma and are virtually invisible in parliamentary politics. Among economic and educational barriers, there are campaign financing inequality. Many women and most young people struggle to finance campaigns and gain access to influential networks. Rural-urban divide politicians from rural areas. Especially women face greater challenges in accessing education, media, and political capital. We think that there are more barriers, but I will mention just those because of the time. For example, reform political party practices by means democratizing candidate selection be encouraged parties to adopt transparent, inclusive nomination process and address cultural and social norms by means of national awareness and any others. And I think the last one that I would like to point here is the leverage international support by aligning with the NAP 1325 to ensure that parliamentary reform contribute directly to the implementation of Timor-Leste National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. And the last is working with the UN agencies and other development parties to secure funding and technical expertise for inclusive governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now would like to give the floor to Mr. Jagas Wickramaratne, Speaker of Parliament, Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much. Looking at the global reasons for this political polarization and adversity for this representation of the female representative parliament. Now, there is no difference between the global scenario with Sri Lanka. So, what we have seen in Sri Lanka, women make up over 52% of population and 56 registered voters. Still, though we had the honor to have the first world prime minister, Sirimao Bandaranaike in early 1960, we couldn't achieve the target, and 2024, we were able to achieve 6.5% of the representation of female represent in the parliament. But in 2024 general election, it became 10%. Earlier about there were 10 parliamentarians, then it became 22 parliamentarians with the current government Lady Prime Minister. So that's a good movement. The other one is now these misogynic comments and these vilifications and defamations and harassments still are the same in Sri Lanka. Now for this the initiatives as a government we have taken that we have women parliamentarians, they can produce, they can come up with their privileges, they can raise the privileges in the parliament. At the same time, the first time in Sri Lanka, we had women committees to talk about their rights and everything, but this government, now they are going to commission, independent commission, women commission. So with all legislative power, so legal power. So then they will definitely handle these issues pertaining to the female. And we do have women caucus, we do have children caucus, young youth caucus that promise to way forward to improve our ground level clearance of this hindrance to the female women present the parliament.
Thank you, Your Excellency. For emergency and for exceptional reasons, I would like now to give the floor, exceptionally, to Ms. Licia Ronzulli, Vice President of the Senate, Italy.
Cari colleghi, è un immenso privilegio rivolgermi a voi oggi rappresentando il Senato della Repubblica Italiana in questo importante dibattito che si concentra su un tema cruciale come la partecipazione attiva delle donne e dei giovani in politica. Ci troviamo in un momento storico di crescente polarizzazione, disinformazione, sfiducia verso le istituzioni, eppure l'entusiasmo di coloro che desiderano contribuire alla res pubblica non è affatto diminuito. Ed è nostro dovere, in quanto rappresentanti delle istituzioni, creare le condizioni affinché questa passione non incontri ostacoli, ma venga supportata e facilitata. E quindi la rappresentanza non è solo un principio, ma l'essenza stessa della democrazia. E per essere autentica deve essere ovviamente inclusiva. Se le donne giovani non sono presenti e attivi nei luoghi in cui si decidono le politiche pubbliche, non possiamo parlare di una vera rappresentanza. In Italia negli ultimi decenni abbiamo compiuto progressi significativi. Oggi oltre il 33% dei membri del Parlamento italiano sono donne, un cambiamento ovviamente notevole rispetto al 5% della prima legislatura nel 1948. Per quanto riguarda i giovani, è essenziale continuare a rimuovere gli ostacoli sociali ed economici che limitino la loro partecipazione alla vita pubblica. Vogliamo anche riconoscere il contesto complesso in cui operiamo, caratterizzato da campagne di odio, in particolare nei confronti delle donne in politica. In Italia, come in altri paesi, molte donne che decidono di impegnarsi in ambito pubblico sono vittime di attacchi sessisti e violenze verbali, spesso purtroppo online. Concludo esprimendo una convinzione profonda. In tempi di grande sfida, rafforzare la partecipazione non è soltanto una questione di giustizia, ma è una vera e propria strategia. Ecco. Quindi laddove le istituzioni sono inclusive, le società sono anche più forti e resilienti. Grazie per la vostra attenzione, ringrazio ovviamente l'Irlanda che mi ha dato la possibilità di anticipare il mio intervento. Ringrazio la cabina interpreti, ringrazio ovviamente gli organizzatori e grazie ancora.
Ms. Ronzulli. I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Verona Murphy, Chairwoman of Dáil Éireann, sorry if I pronounce it wrongly, from Ireland.
Apologies, we had agreed to swap with the Italians, so we're bumped further down the list.
Okay, then we'll come back to you. Okay, we'll come back to you. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Philemon Gitoko, Speaker of Parliament, Fiji.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a privilege for me to speak on an issue that is central to the shaping of a democracy that professes that it is resilient, inclusive, and genuinely representative. And the theme could not be more urgent or relevant to our proceedings. We all agree that the meaningful representation in a democracy goes beyond the numbers. It is about bringing diverse voices, life experiences, and leadership styles into the decision-making spaces. It means truly reflecting the views, the hopes, and the realities of the people we serve. For us to confront our long-standing challenges on underrepresentation, Fijian Parliament has proudly championed initiatives such as the Women's and the Youth Mock Parliaments. These platforms are crafted to ignite ambition and grow confidence and nurture leadership in the two targeted groups across our nation. In July last year, we hosted the Women's Mock Parliament, an inspiring event that brought together 56 women in our 56-member parliament from all backgrounds. They gained first-hand knowledge of parliamentary practice and debated real national issues. More importantly, they found the courage to pursue leadership within Parliament and we hope beyond. This year, we turn our attention to the Youth Mock Parliament, set to take place next month, September. Young Fijians will sit in the very seat of national decision-making, voicing their ideas, their concerns, and their vision of the new Fiji. They will not just prepare to lead someday, they are to all intents and purpose leading now. These two initiatives form part of a broader national effort to foster leaders who govern with empathy, think with foresight, and work in a spirit of unity. We know only too well that exclusion fuels division, whilst inclusion builds and shares purposes and lasting progress. So when women and youth participate, our democracy becomes more vibrant, dynamic, more equitable, and more relevant to our daily lives. We all benefit. And as Fiji approaches its next elections next year, we are calling upon our young people to step forward, to run, to vote, to advocate, and to lead. Leadership is not defined by age or gender, but by ideas, by courage, and by the sincere commitment to serve. So we only ask that we shape our parliament that reflects all of us. Let us turn to the challenges of polarization into opportunities for connection, collaboration, and transformation for a better future for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Ali Kolutu Chaimi, Speaker of National Assembly, Chad.
Merci, Madame la modératrice. Je voudrais vous remercier au nom du Tchad et au nom de la délégation qui m'accompagne, la célérité avec laquelle vous dirigez les débats. En ce qui concerne notre thématique, qui porte sur la participation des femmes et des jeunes à la vie parlementaire dans un contexte de polarisation et d'adversité, Madame la modératrice, je voudrais vous dire tout simplement qu'au Tchad, nous ne connaissons ni la polarisation ni l'adversité. Puisque nous avons une culture tchadienne, nos us et coutumes ne connaissent ni l'agression ni la violence sur un jeune ou une femme. Donc, pour revenir à notre thématique, je voudrais vous citer quelques exemples pour illustrer et pour donner satisfaction à la thématique qui fait aujourd'hui à travers le monde une grande préoccupation. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes à la 4e législature au niveau de l'Assemblée nationale. À la 1re législature, nous avons 2 femmes à l'Assemblée nationale. 2e législature, nous avons 9 femmes. 3e législature, nous avons 25 femmes. Nous avons connu une rupture à l'ordre constitutionnel pendant le Parlement provisoire. Nous avons eu au Parlement 34 femmes. Aujourd'hui, nous avons 64 femmes sur 188 femmes. Donc nous avons 34%. Les autorités tchadiennes ont pris des actes réglementaires qui ont donné 30% aux femmes. Nous sommes au-delà de ce que les femmes attendaient. Donc nous avons fait des avancées terribles. Pendant la 1re législature du Sénat, nous avons aujourd'hui 25 sénatrices. Donc, tout simplement pour vous dire qu'au Tchad, les termes comme polarisation, adversité sont trop insignifiants. Et au gouvernement, elles sont beaucoup plus nombreuses. C'est des postes nominatifs. Nous avons 8 grandes institutions. Sur les 8 grandes institutions, il y a 2 femmes. Donc,
Votre Excellence, je suis désolée, on me demande de vous couper la parole. Vous avez excédé d'1 minute, je suis désolée.
Merci beaucoup.
Énormément désolée. So I have the big brother asking me to be more strict with you and really to stop you at 2 minutes. So please be my champion and make my life easier. I really don't like to cut you short. Thank you so much. So now I would like to... Oui, allez-y. Go ahead, please.
The criteria you used to select the people you've just called, the speakers, because we are just seated here. We didn't know if there is a backdoor people are using. So please, can you also give us an opportunity to speak? So, but
a colleague from IPU is just behind you who will explain the process. We really appreciate your willingness to participate in this important...
Yeah, but you should have told us the criteria. We are just sitting here, wasting our time. We have got good things to talk about our country also, and we don't have the opportunity to speak.
Sure, your country is very important, and we have a lot of things to share. I'm sure my colleague from IPU will give you the process. And meanwhile, I would like to give the floor now to Ms. Natalie Kiselova, Speaker of the National Assembly, Bulgaria.
I will speak in Bulgarian. Ваши превъзходителства, уважаеми колеги, през последното десетилетие ставаме свидетели на все по-задълбочаваща се политическа и обществена поляризация. В подобни времена расте недоверието към институциите, а популистки екстремистки сили набират подкрепа. В този контекст участието на жените и младите хора в парламентарния живот има особено голямо значение. В България делът на жените в Народното събрание варира между 20 и 25%, което остава под препоръчителния праг от 30%, определен от Организацията на Обединените нации като минимум за постигане на критична маса с възможност за реално влияние. В България делът на младите хора е малко по-висок. И в 51-то Народно събрание, на което съм председател, и беше избрано през ноември 2025 година, 3,8% от народните представители са под 30 години. И жените и младите хора, именно защото не са трайно обвързани с установените властови структури, често са най-силните носители на нова перспектива. Какви са решенията? Ролята на политическите партии, обучителни програми, дигитални платформи за участие, подкрепа от партиите в конкретни ситуации. Благодаря ви за вниманието.
Thank you so much, Bulgaria. You finished 20 seconds before 2 minutes. Thank you. So for this, I applaud you again. Thank you. We really want to give the floor to everyone. I'm sure we have a lot to learn from you, from all the success stories in your countries. Thank you so much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Vital Kamere Laukanijini Nkingi. I'm sorry for pronunciation. Speaker of the National Assembly, Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Il a demandé qu'on intervienne.
Later on, now I give the floor to Mr. Richard Rasi, Speaker of the National Council, Slovakia.
Dear colleagues, in Slovakia, young people under 30 make up about a third of the population, and recognizing their importance, we are actively working to ensure they feel heard and represented in democratic life. Their participation is not only a matter of fairness, but also essential to the strength and sustainability of our democracies, both today and for generations to come. At the National Council of Slovak Republic, we believe in working with young people, not just for them. Since 1999, over 800 university students have taken part in our parliamentary internship program, including students from marginalized communities. They contribute directly to committee work and gain valuable experience. Since 2022, we also co-organize a model youth parliament giving young people a platform to debate real policy issues and develop civic skills. And starting in 2026, we launch a university course on parliamentarism in cooperation with our universities to deepen students' understanding of democratic institutions. We also engage younger audience through open parliamentary days, school visits and publication for children caught exploring our parliament. In all these efforts, we pay special attention to including girls and young women because their inclusion leads to long-term change. Empowering youth and women is not just a priority, it's a strategic investment in a more inclusive, resilient and democratic future. We are committed to bringing this ambition to every table where decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Mamon Heng Mokitimi, President of the Senate, Lesotho.
Is it okay? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. In times of political polarization and adversity, participation of women and youth in Parliament becomes not only desirable, but essential. These groups bring fresh perspectives, bridge community concerns, and re-energize democratic institutions. Yet across the world and in Lesotho, women and youth continue to face barriers to meaningful participation. Patriarchal norms and political gatekeeping often limit women access to leadership positions. Economic dependency and lack of campaign resources hinder both women and young people from contesting for seats. Violence, intimidation, and cyberbullying, particularly during elections, silence many voices before they are even heard. Most troubling polarized political environments marginalize dissent and discourage independent thought, conditions which make it even harder for new and diverse leaders to emerge. Despite these challenges, Lesotho has made notable strides. The national reforms process has placed emphasis on inclusive representation and electoral system review. Youth and women's civil society movements are gaining momentum, advocating for policy change and political access. Quotas at local government level have demonstrated that representation matters and it works. However, more must be done. I propose the following as a way forward. Legal and policy frameworks should be strengthened to guarantee a minimum level of youth and women representation, especially at the national level. Political parties must be held accountable for internal democracy and inclusion in candidate selection process. Civil education and mentoring programs should be expanded to prepare young and female leaders for political life. Parliament itself must evolve into a more inclusive, safe, and enabling space, free from harassment and bias. Let us, as legislators, open the doors wider. Let us protect and promote inclusion, especially when adversity tempts us to retreat. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Julia Klockner, President of Bundestag, Germany.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, speakers and colleagues, a parliament that speaks for all citizens should adequately reflect society. Less than a third of members of the German Bundestag are women. We clearly have a lot of catching up to do. Here we face a paradox. While women are fighting for visibility in politics, it is very visibility that makes them vulnerable. Women who get involved in public debate are often insulted, threatened and attacked, in public and, of course, online. Online violence has increased in Germany by 25%. In 2023, over 17,000 women were affected by stalking, threats, covert recordings, or sexualized deepfakes. 1 in 2 women in the European Union self-censor as a result of hostile actions. Successful female politicians are withdrawing from the spotlight, not due to weakness, but because the personal cost has become too high. This development puts our democracies at risk. If only those who can withstand the toughest attacks are the ones who remain, our democratic society threatens to become increasingly brutal. And moreover, our parliaments will become poorer in terms of perspectives, the variety of solutions and in participations. I know that some countries are further advanced than we are in Germany when it comes to the representation of women. I look forward to hearing your experiences and strategies for improving these representations. And let's ensure together that appropriate representations does not remain just an ideal, but a lived reality in our parliaments. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to go back to Ireland now and give the floor to Ms. Verona Murphy, Chairwoman of Dáil Éireann.
Thank you. Women's and youth's participation in Parliament in a time of polarisation is essential. It is an honour to address you today on a matter that lies at the heart of democratic resilience, the participation of women and youth in our parliaments, particularly in times of polarisation and adversity. Ireland's international development policy, A Better World, establishes gender equality as one of our 4 core policy priorities as both a fundamental human right and under international law, as well as a necessary condition for sustainable global development. Despite progress, we remain a long way off in achieving equal representation of women in Parliament, and rates of progress have been stagnating in recent years. Women in politics continue to experience unacceptable and increasing systemic violence, online abuse and harassment. Combating political violence against women must go hand in hand with creating and enabling an environment for equitable participation. Ireland is a proud and a long-standing partner of the Interparliamentary Union, providing support to IPU's programmes strengthening the promotion of gender equality and participation of women in politics. We in Ireland know from our own lived experience that peace building is an intergenerational process and must be inclusive of young people. Whilst there have been achievements with youth, peace and security agenda, we can and must do more to ensure the empowerment and inclusion of young people and the amplification of their voices. In December 22, Ireland co-hosted, in partnership with Ecuador and Ghana, an ARIA formula meeting to mark the 7th anniversary of the YPS agenda. It was the first occasion in 2 years for the UN Security Council to discuss the YPS. Colleagues, democracy cannot thrive with a section of the population excluded or if the next generation is silenced. Let us reaffirm our commitment to inclusive representative parliaments that reflect the full diversity of our societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this inspirational speech and for Ireland's support to IPU. Now we move to the second category of heads and members of delegation. We have 10 speakers, so I would like to ask you again to stick to the 2 minutes, please. To start, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Katarina Barley, Vice President of the European Parliament.
Thank you very much, dear President. Actually, it's very difficult to say something new about women participation in parliaments, because for decades we know that a meaningful involvement of women results in significantly more likelihood for peace, for prosperity, for social justice, for sustainability in just about every sense. And still, so slowly, the things are changing. So, yes, we do our efforts. We, as a European Parliament, for example, we have a Women's Parliamentarians Empowerment Program called the Simone Veil Program. But I think it probably is more useful to look into the causes and to tackle them. And I was very grateful for the insights that Mr. Vandenberg gave us, because I think we also have to look at how men deal with this issue. When it comes to youth participation, probably the problems are similar. It is that individual power and networks are being rated more important than the values that I just mentioned. And it is even more difficult to include more young people into parliamentary work, as we have already heard. The fundament for the information that young people receive at the moment have changed so much. The influence of social media and the reliability or unreliability of the facts you get there. So there, our way forward to increase youth participation is threefold. We focus firstly on the reliability and accessibility of information, including the role of the media and truth or facts in today's democratic society. Secondly, on political literacy and the role of civic education. And finally, on the accessibility of democratically elected institutions and their strength. Thank you very much.
So much. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Abdel Nabi Salman, First Deputy Speaker of Chamber of Representatives from Bahrain.
Thank you. I would like to share my brief point of view in Arabic. أن تعزيز مشاركة المرأة والشباب في العمل البرلماني لم يعد مسألة شكلية أو مطلبا سياسيا فحسب، بل هو ركيزة أساسية في تجديد الخطاب التشريعي وتحصين المجتمعات ضد الاستقطاب والانغلاق ومد الجسور بين الأجيال والتجارب والآمال، باعتبار أن هذه الفئات روافد حيوية للتفكير السياسي المتجدد. وفي هذا الصدد يشرفني أن أؤكد أن مملكة البحرين قد أولت اهتماما بالغا بتمكين المرأة والشباب معا، بوصفهم شركاء فاعلين في صنع مستقبل الوطن. فقد شكل تمكين المرأة والشباب ركيزة محورية في المشروع الإصلاحي لملك البلاد، حيث ترجمت الرؤية الوطنية إلى سياسات ومبادرات فعلية رسخت العدالة في الفرص والمساواة في الحقوق والمشاركة الفاعلة في الحياة العامة. فعلى صعيد تمكين المرأة لا تزال البحرين تسجل خطوات ريادية، بدءا من الإطار الدستوري والقانوني الضامن لحقوقها وصولا إلى تمثيلها المتنامي في السلطة التشريعية والتنفيذية. وقد شهدت البلاد محطة مفصلية حين تولت امرأة رئاسة مجلس النواب في الفصل التشريعي السابق في سابقة عربية مشرفة، كما تحظى النساء وخاصة الشابات بمناصب قيادية في مجالات حيوية كوزارة الصحة مثلا ووزارة التنمية المستدامة والسياحة والإسكان، مما يعكس تحول التمكين من شعار إلى واقع. وانطلاقا من هذه التجربة الوطنية الراسخة، فإننا ندعو في هذا المنبر البرلماني الجامع إلى تعزيز الضمانات الدستورية والقانونية والسياسية لمشاركة المرأة والشباب في البرلمانات حول العالم، وبوصفهم شركاء حقيقيين في صياغة سياسات وصناعة القرار وترسيخ دعائم السلم الأهلي. إن تمكينهم ليس خيارا تجميليا، بل ضرورة استراتيجية لضمان استدامة الاستقرار وتفعيل المشاركة الشعبية في زمن تتزايد فيه التحديات وتتعقد فيه الانقسامات. شكرا.
شكرا. Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Morten Wold, Vice President of the Storting, Norway.
Very much. In democracy, we need every voice to be heard. We are witnessing challenges to the legitimacy and effectiveness of democratic institutions. Important groups such as women and youth, and also the elderly, must have their rightful representation in Parliament. An inclusive Parliament is fundamental to ensure public trust in democracy. Norway has long been committed to gender equality and youth participation in politics. And today, we have almost 45% women in the Parliament. And actually, by the election in September, a young candidate, a female of 18 years old, actually has the possibility to be elected. And the women are getting important positions in our country. Out of 10 party groups in the Parliament, 9 have a woman as parliamentary leader. We have a strong tradition for youth wings in political parties. Political parties must take responsibility for recruiting, mentoring, and supporting young and female candidates. And as parliamentarians, we have a duty to ensure that every voice counts and every voice is safe. An inclusive parliament is not just more representative, it is more legitimate, more innovative, and more resilient. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Hamda bint Hassan Al-Sulaiti, Deputy Speaker of the Shura Council, Qatar. I just want, before I give you the floor, I have just been informed that we have to give this room at 6:15. So let's please stick to the 2 minutes time. Please go ahead, Qatar.
سعادة الرئيسة، سأتحدث عن في هذا الموضوع حول 4 نقاط. أولاً الاهتمام. I will stop until they finish and then I will continue.
Excuse me, colleagues. We need a little bit of calm and silence. Thank you so much. Qatar, please go ahead.
الرئيسة، طبعاً سأتحدث عن 4 نقاط أساسية لهذا الموضوع. النقطة الأولى هي الاهتمام بالمرأة والشباب في دولة قطر. تمثل هذا الاهتمام في عدة أمور. أولاً رؤية قطر الوطنية واهتمامها بهاتين الفئتين اهتماماً كبيراً من حيث الرعاية ومن حيث الاهتمام. ثم بعد ذلك توجيهات القيادة الرشيدة في دولة قطر ممثلة في حضرة صاحب السمو الشيخ تميم بن حمد آل ثاني أمير الدولة، الذي اهتم اهتماماً كبيراً سواء بالمرأة والشباب، وتمثل ذلك في المبادرات التي سوف أذكرها لاحقاً. النقطة الثالثة وهي رؤية قطر الوطنية وأيضاً الاستراتيجيات القطاعية اللاحقة لها. ومن أهم المبادرات التي اهتم بها مجلس الشورى وقادها هي المحاكاة لطلبة الجامعات وأيضاً للعاملين في الجهات بحيث يحاكون جلسات المجلس ويتم تدريبهم داخل مجلس الشورى. النقطة الثانية منتدى الشباب الذي أقيم في دولة قطر على هامش منتدى الدوحة ويضم مجموعة كبيرة من الشباب. المبادرة الرابعة وهي مكتب مكافحة الإرهاب، أيضاً عقد منتدى واستمر لمدة تقريباً شهر، دريت فيه أيضاً العديد من الدورات التدريبية، زيارة الطلبة سواء طلبة المدارس أو طلبة الجامعات. هناك تقدم نسبي على حول العالم حول ذلك، وقد ذكرنا ذلك بالأمس وذكرته مديرة مكتب النساء البرلمانيات، لكن نقترح تطوير البيئة التشريعية وأيضا والسياسات، المشاركة الفاعلة في اللجان البرلمانية، المشاركة الفاعلة في اللجان الدائمة للاتحاد البرلماني الدولي، تنظيم وتطوير برامج تأهيلية وتدريبية سياسية للشباب والنساء، برامج توعوية مجتمعية تعزز وتثمن دور المرأة والشباب، وتشريعات تجرم العنف الإلكتروني والتهديدات للنساء. شكرا.
شكرا. Shukran. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Soundthorn Gzaya Shak, Vice President of the National Assembly, Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to address this important forum, Women's and Youth Participation in Parliament, reflecting the IPU's strong commitment to inclusive governance at the time of growing global challenges. The meaningful participation of women and youth is essential to inclusive development, sustainable peace, and effective conflict resolution. In the Lao PDR, we have integrated SDG 5 on gender equality into a 5-year national social economic development plan, and we are actively implementing the National Action Plan for Gender Equality 2021-2025 to eliminate discrimination and promote the full participation in all aspects of life. Up to now, we have 21.9% of women in the Lao National Assembly and 30% vote in the next elections. For youth, we are advancing the Lao Youth Development Strategy to ensure the voices and leadership. Currently, 12.2% of our National Assembly members are youth, and we have established a committee of young members to strengthen their role in policy making and international cooperation, particularly within IPA and the IPU. We believe that through continued cooperation and experience sharing, we can empower women and youth to help shape a more inclusive, peaceful, and resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Benyatou, Member of the Parliament, Algeria. أرض المليون شهيد.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة المحترمة، زميلات الزملاء النواب. لقد عرفت بلادنا الجزائر جملة من الإصلاحات السياسية والاقتصادية الرامية إلى تحقيق مقاصد التنمية المستدامة وتحسين مناخ الأعمال وتشجيع فئة الشباب على ولوج مجال المقاولاتية وتمكين المرأة اقتصاديا والتكفل بالفئات الهشة في المجتمع ضمن استراتيجية شاملة تهدف إلى التكفل بجميع فئات المجتمع من خلال العديد من الإجراءات الهادفة إلى بلوغ التطور الاقتصادي دون إغفال الجانب الاجتماعي. وقد حرص رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون على إيلاء المرأة المكانة التي تستحقها وجعل من ترقيتها والتمكين لها ضمن صادرات التزاماته، كما جعل للقضايا المرأة والأسرة من أهم انشغالات الحكومة. كما كرست المبادئ الدستورية المساواة بين الجنسين والدفاع عن الحقوق السياسية للمرأة من خلال ضمان حظوظ تمثيلها في المجالس والهيئات المنتخبة، بتجديد مبدأ المناصفة في التمثيل السياسي وتعزيز مكانتها الاجتماعية وحمايتها من جميع أشكال العنف والتميز. يعيش العالم تحولات عميقة جراء تفاقم النزاعات وانتشار عدم الاستقرار عبر العالم، كما أنه لن يتسنى للدول معالجة مسألة منع الصراعات وحلها بطريقة شاملة ومستدامة دون وضع رؤية للشباب في الاعتبار عند التخطيط وصناعة القرار. ويعد قرار مجلس الأمن الدولي رقم 2250 حول الشباب والسلام والأمن علاقة فارغة في اعترافاته بأهمية دور الشباب في منع وحل الصراعات. ولقد أصبح اليوم من الضرورة من أي وقت مضى الإنصات لصوت الشباب وجعلهم قادة التغيير من أجل بناء سلام وشامل ودامج. لقد تم تكريس وترقية الشباب في الدستور الجزائري من خلال سهر الدولة على توفير الوسائل المؤسساتية والمادية الكفيلة بتنمية قدرات الشباب وتحفيز طاقاتهم الإبداعية وتشجيعهم على المشاركة في الحياة السياسية وحمايتهم من الآفات الاجتماعية. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
شكرا جزائر. شكرا. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Mohammed Zaki, member of the House of Representatives, Egypt. الدنيا.
Les prochains. Je suis بداية أود أن أعبر عن بالغ الاعتزاز بمشاركة أعمال هذه الحلقة النقاشية المهمة والتي تتناول موضوعا يتعلق بمستقبل العالم ومستقبل مجتمعاتنا خاصة في تلك المرحلة الفارقة، وهو تمكين المرأة والشباب في البرلمانات. ودعونا نتفق أننا عندما نتحدث عن التمكين البرلماني للمرأة والشباب لا نتحدث عن تمكين عددي أو رمزي، وإنما عن تمكين فعلي وحقيقي باعتبار خيارا استراتيجيا ملحا لضمان توازن المجتمعات وفاعليتها في مواجهة الأزمات الوجودية المحدقة بنا جميعا. الزميلات العزيزات والزملاء الأعزاء، تتبنى مصر تجربة واعدة لتمكين الشباب والمرأة على شتى المستويات في إطار أجندتها التنموية الطموحة 2030 الهادفة للوصول لمجتمع أكثر عدلا واستدامة. وقد حرصت الدولة المصرية في إطار إرادة سياسية جادة وصادقة من فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس جمهورية مصر العربية على تدشين تجربة مؤسسية مدعومة بنصوص دستورية تكفل تمثيل المرأة والشباب في البرلمان، وهو ما أسفر عن تمثيل المرأة بنسبة أكثر من 27% في مجلس النواب المصري ونسبة 14% في مجلس الشيوخ المصري. وفي كلا المجلسين تقلدت المرأة مناصب برلمانية رفيعة أبرزها نائبة رئيس مجلس الشيوخ ورئاسة عدد من اللجان النوعية، كما بلغت نسبة تمثيل الشباب المصري أكثر من 20% بمجلس النواب في ترجمة حقيقية لجهود بناءة ومدروسة بذلتها الدولة المصرية في التأهيل النوعي للمرأة والشباب عبر مؤسسات خصصت لهذا الغرض وفي مقدمتها الأكاديمية الوطنية للتدريب. Thank you.
I'd like now to give the floor to Ms. Lilia Gumerova, member of the Council of the Federation of Russian Federation.
Спасибо большое. Благодарю за возможность выступить по столь важной теме. Что касается женской повестки, хотела бы обратить внимание, что на международном треке особое внимание Совет Федерации уделяет работе по линии Евразийского женского форума. В прошлом году под эгидой Совета Федерации он уже прошел в 4-й раз и собрал женщин-лидеров из более чем 100 государств мира. Его значимым итогом стало создание и развитие новых женских объединений, например, женского делового альянса БРИКС. На площадке Евразийского женского форума я традиционно веду площадку «Женщины-ученые», и мы объединились, делимся своими практиками, как создать условия для того, чтобы женщина занималась политикой, наукой, карьерой и могла совмещать роль хранительницы домашнего очага, и у нас уже есть успехи. Что касается молодежи, молодых парламентариев, уже 10 лет назад по инициативе Валентины Ивановны Матвиенко был создан молодежный парламент. В него вошли самые активные представители регионов из молодых парламентариев. И целый ряд их предложений уже стали в основе законодательства. Уважаемые коллеги, сегодня госпожа председатель спрашивала, а как законодательно помочь молодежи развить свои способности, как поддержать? Так вот, буквально несколько дней назад мы в России приняли закон о студенческих семьях, прописали стандарт студенческой семьи. И когда мы создаем окно возможностей, чтобы наши молодые люди успешно совмещали учебу, создавали семьи, то тогда, конечно, наша молодежь почувствует поддержку. Я благодарю за возможность выступить, убеждена, что представленная в рамках нынешней дискуссии возможность обмена опытом позволит в наибольшей мере включать вопросы расширения прав женщин, девушек, молодежи в повестку работы парламентов.
Now to go back to the delegation of Democratic Republic of the Congo. Kindly say your name and your title and go ahead.
Merci Madame. Moi c'est l'honorable Kitwa Godale Naïda. Je suis députée en République démocratique du Congo. Et à l'Union interparlementaire, je suis membre au comité exécutif. La participation de femmes et de jeunes à la vie parlementaire en République démocratique du Congo est complexe, surtout dans la situation d'insécurité et de la guerre. Bien qu'il y a des avancées sur le plan législatif et que les lois, la Constitution de la République démocratique du Congo impose l'égalité de sexe, la participation politique de femmes et de jeunes, mais hélas, on est tous confrontés aux obstacles socio-culturels et économiques comme ailleurs. Mais nous notons qu'il y a des avancées au niveau de deux chambres, donc du Parlement, surtout au niveau de l'Assemblée nationale. Nous notons que le membre du bureau aujourd'hui, sur 7 membres du bureau, l'Assemblée nationale de la RDC a 3 femmes sur 7. Dont le rapporteur adjoint, questeur et la questeure adjointe. Les commissions parlementaires à l'Assemblée, tout comme au Sénat, sur 10 commissions permanentes, nous avons 4 femmes qui dirigent les commissions permanentes, ainsi que le comité des sages. Nous avons le réseau de femmes parlementaires, donc le caucus des femmes parlementaires et le réseau de jeunes. Mais nous nous disons que beaucoup reste à faire, surtout dans notre législation, pour que nous puissions respecter l'égalité de 50-50. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Hanan Al-Masri, Vice President of the Arab Parliament.
Shukran. Allow me to speak Arabic as a president, and as I am Speaker of Arab Parliament. My name is Hanan Al-Smari. السلام عليكم. يسعدني أن أشارك ممثلة عن البرلمان العربي في هذا النقاش الذي يسلط الضوء على أهمية تعزيز مشاركة المرأة والشباب في العمل البرلماني، ليس فقط كمبدأ للعدالة والمساواة، بل كوسيلة فعالة لتحقيق التنمية المستدامة وضرورة حتمية لتعزيز شرعية المؤسسات البرلمانية. لقد اتخذت العديد من الدول العربية خطوات مهمة نحو تمكين المرأة والشباب من خلال إصلاحات تشريعية وإرادة سياسية جعلت من التمثيل المتوازن أولوية وطنية. ولا يسعفني الوقت للحديث عن كل التجارب العربية، وأتحدث هنا على سبيل المثال عن تجربة وطني المملكة العربية السعودية التي شهدت تطوراً ملموساً في هذا المجال من خلال إصلاحات تشريعية ومؤسسية ومجتمعية عكست الرؤية الرشيدة لقيادة المملكة وإيمانها العميق بأن النهوض بالمجتمع لا يكتمل دون مشاركة فاعلة من جميع فئاته، وهو ما تجسد في رؤية المملكة 2030 التي وضعت تمكين المرأة والشباب في صلب أولوياتها. وأنا هنا أمثل المرأة في مجلس الشورى السعودي الذي يمثل فيه المرأة 20% من نسبة البرلمان، كما أرأس حاليا لجنة التجارة والاستثمار. حضور الكريم، إننا في البرلمان العربي نؤمن بأن مستقبل العمل البرلماني يكمن في التنوع والتمكين، والمطلوب اليوم ليس فقط ضمان الوصول إلى المقاعد البرلمانية، بل توفير البيئة التشريعية والمؤسسية العادلة مؤسسية وعادلة وآمنة تمكن المرأة والشباب من ممارسة أدوارهم القيادية بكل استقلالية وتأثير. ختاماً نتطلع لأن يكون هذا المؤتمر فرصة لتبادل التجارب وتعزيز التعاون البرلماني العالمي من أجل بناء مؤسسات برلمانية أكثر شمولاً وفعالية. شكراً.
Shukran. And now I would like to give the floor to our last speaker, Mr. Giulio Santemero, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, PAM.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As President of the PAM, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, I'm very happy to be here. And as we all know, today we are facing instability, conflicts, but also we have two more elephants in the room: our birth rates and longevity. Within our regions, the Mediterranean and the Gulf, we witness different dynamics in these two elephants in the room. For example, in my country, Italy, we live longer, but we make less babies. In this perspective, and the perspective of even opposite dynamics, it is key to include more and more women and youth in the socio-economic and political life, and fundamental that we create new jobs, new dreams, i.e. a future for our children. This is why, as PAM, we have created, alongside our permanent committees, one forum of women parliamentarians, and it was created since 2021, and the next edition will be held between 26 and 28 January in Abu Dhabi. And we are pushing for a new initiative that will be organized most probably during 2026, our youth initiative, a forum of fora, a forum of existing fora of youth, bridging the gap between existing fora and institution. In times of adversity and polarization, it is essential to push for inclusive leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On behalf of IPU and our partners, I would like to thank you for your attendance and attention and for being part of this critical conversation. The session is now closed. Thank you.